with our radio show.
Ray, when did you start getting into music? What inspired you?
What really got me into it was my dad. We lived way down in the pine forest in New Jersey, near Philadelphia, in the Pine Barrens. And my dad, all the radio stations were down there in Atco, New Jersey. So my dad had a dirt runway airport, and he took me down to one of the radio stations where a guy kept his plane in my dad's little airfield. And I was little, and they sat me on a little stool in the control booth, and they went in to talk, and I just started listening to music, and that was it. I was probably 6, 7. And after that, the guy gave me a 33 called Quindado or something with Jerry Mulligan or somebody. And that was it. After that, it was all I wanted to do.
Now, did you ever feel back then that this would be something that would evolve into a career for you, or did you just think that maybe it was just a hobby?
No, I never thought it would be a career because there was no money. Saw American Bandstand on TV one day, and we lived in New Jersey, south of Philadelphia, and I said, well, that's where I have to be. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was 13 and a half, 14, and I hitchhiked to Philadelphia from where I lived. It's about an hour and a half, and stood outside, and they wouldn't let me in because they said I was too young. And then after about 6 months, finally Dick Clark said, you're not 16. I said, of course I am. I'm 16. And he said, okay, I'm going to let you in this time. And he let me in every day. And I got a girl that was probably a foot taller than me to dance with. That was a regular there. And after a few months, boom, I met somebody and went on the road, never to go back home.
So now, was Dick Clark as nice as everybody said he was? He seemed like a really nice man.
Dick Clark was one of the nicest people as a kid I could have probably ever met. And I did all the dances he had me come to. They didn't just do the American Bandstand Monday through Friday in black and white back then. They did all, Dick Clark hosted all these hops, they were called back then. So wherever he'd go, he'd tell me where he was going to be, and I'd hitchhike there.
So when did you sit down and write your very first song? Do you remember the very first song you ever wrote in your life?
Yeah, it was called Eminem. My baby's name is Eminem.
Now, did you write that for somebody special?
No, I just met this girl, Mary Marie or something, and she was really cute, and I thought, wow. I mean, I was young, and to me, that was like, oof, she was beautiful. And
she was your muse.
She was my first muse, I guess, yeah.
So let's fast forward from writing that very first song and what became your very first big break. In your mind, what first got you noticed out there in the industry?
Running naked down the street. No.
That will get you noticed.
That would get you noticed, probably into the jail. What I don't know. I was just one of those young people that's it. I mean, I learned to play the clarinet when I was about 5 or 6. And from the clarinet, I really wanted to play the saxophone, so I bought a plastic little saxophone for like $2. And it went from that to flute to piano to, I always sang because my mother and father sang in the church. Mm-hmm. So I always went with my mother to choir practice. And once I heard choirs, it was a little funky church in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, but still, when you hear a choir singing spiritual songs and you're really young, it moved me. It moved my soul, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then the first thing I did was a saxophone. That's what I really wanted to do, and that's what I was really good at, is playing the saxophone. I didn't start out to be a singer. I really wanted to be a saxophonist, tenor saxophonist, which I got really good at. And then I played with a lot of people in the South, and Otis Pickett, Little Richard, one night here, one night there, and Otis said, man, go to New York. I'm sending you to go to New York and sing. And I went to New York and sang, and that's it. Started signed to Atlantic Records. I was about 15. And Ahmet Ertegun signed me and this other guy as a duet, and we signed to Atlantic Records, and I guess it was 62, 63 maybe.
So at that moment you got signed, man, what was it, balls to the wall? I mean, was you living the rock lifestyle, you know, like they say, sex, drugs,
Well,
rock and roll?
It was, yeah, well, it was pre-Beatles, you know, it was before the Beatles and all that, but it was, yeah, I guess it was pretty wild. I mean, I kind of was going to, I was running away. My parents weren't around much, so I kind of lived in the middle of the Pine Barrens near Philadelphia. So they were pretty much going their own way, and I would just climb out the cellar window and hitchhike. And I was going to dances and everywhere, you know, Chevu Bar. There was all these different dances in Philadelphia and near Philadelphia, and I would hitchhike. And I was a little guy. I look back now and go like, Jesus, you know, how did I get away with that? But my parents were never around, so they didn't really know where I was at. But they let me pretty much go do what I wanted as a little kid, as a little guy, because I never got, police never had to call them, and so I guess they thought what I was doing was okay. But there was always music around me, whether it was church or I had an a cappella group in school when I was really young in grammar school. And I grew up in an area that was pretty much African American, and the Pine Woods and the Pine Barrens near Philadelphia. And so most of my friends were African American. Where I'm from, it was a lot of gospel, a lot of gospel Baptist churches and all.
Well, let's talk about some of your hits you've either sang or you've wrote. You know, you had so many, but let's narrow it down to a couple just to fit this show. You know, what are some of the ones that you're most proud of? You know, the ones that when you sit down at night and, you know, reminisce about what you've done and you think, you know, wow, man, I did that.
Geez. I think each one would have a particular something. You know, I don't think I wrote, I think I lived my music more than, you know, I think I just wrote about my life. You know, I don't think that I really thought too much about when I wrote. I never really thought about writing a song. I don't know if that makes sense to your listening audience, but I mean, I never sat down and said I'm going to write a song. I would always just either. I still don't. I mean, I could name you the first song, Eminem, the first song I did. I never have a book of my music. I never write lyrics very much down. I mean, and I can remember all the songs I start. I could sit at the piano right now and probably sit there and go over 500, 600, 700 songs that I've started and never finished.
Well, they say all the best songs just come to you real quick. Is that how it happened with you? Like some of your top hits that you've wrote? I mean, 10, 15 minutes,
well,
something like that?
No, I think it was a little bit more painful than that. Most of the stuff that I wrote was a quick. I think when people say they wrote that song in 10 minutes, I think that I believe part of it being I've been in the business so long. But then again, you know, I mean, it's not like you just say I wrote this whole song in 5 minutes. You know, I mean, you tweak it here, you change a verse there, you take a word out here. But I don't know. I never think of it as writing a song. I'm not a big cover guy. I don't really do. I've never really been a guy that had a band where I wanted to do cover songs of other people. And I was lucky enough to when I was really young and first got in the business, people were doing other. You know, it was usually like, you know, Phil Spector, different people, or whoever was doing it, Ronette, and they were somebody write it, Jeff, and other people would record.
So basically, what you're saying is your songs like the diary of your life?
Yeah, anything I've ever written has been about my life, been something I've been around or involved in. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that writes songs about other people's tragedy or other people's. I've had enough tragedy in my life and enough goodness in my life to have plenty to write about.
What do you like better, man? Do you like performing or do you like songwriting?
I don't think of songwriting as being anything special. I think it's a gift maybe that I can follow through, and through doing music that and loving music that it becomes a song. But I think most songs, if you really look at them, if they're instrumentals, then of course it's music and it's a song, or it's just music, or music, not just music. But when you have lyrics, it's basically a story about something. And I think I seem to just write a lot of stories, about either, for sure, my life. I don't sit down and write about other people's lives. I mean, I pretty much write about, my own life.
I've always wondered about songwriters and how songs get matched up with performers. Do songwriters ever have input on that, or is it usually out of their hands?
Well, what do you mean, do the performers do? In the old days, the performers had very little to say about anything they were going to do.
Yeah, I'm talking about, like, if you wrote a song, let's say, for instance, didn't you write a song and the Beach Boys, Sail on Sailor, performed that, right?
We wrote, Brian Wilson and I, Danny Hutton from Three Dog Night called me up, and that's just an interesting story. Danny Hutton from Three Dog Night, one of the main singers, called me up at like 2 o'clock one morning. He said, "Man, Brian Wilson's sitting in my house at the piano, Ray, and we need a hit. Could you get right over here?" I went, "Now?" And he said, "Yeah, I knew this would be like a week. Once you get around to the guys, Danny, Three Dog Night, and Brian Wilson, it's going to be a week." And so I said, "Sure." And I, lived up on the mountain near them in Beverly Hills. And so I drove over to Laurel Canyon and to Danny's house at like 2 a.m, and Brian was sitting at a piano not talking, and they stuck me in this little room with Brian. And we barely talked, and I just sat at the piano, and I started tinkering, and he was tinkering at one end, and it started. That's why I think, I always would think, and of course, the Beach Boys version was changed. The lyrics changed. It was not written about the ocean. Brian and I wrote that as the way I recorded it, personally about, I'm a singer, gospel singer. I sing for people. I sing for pleasure. Only a dreamer came from nowhere. Sail on, sail on, sailor. It was about a person going through life and keep your head up. Don't let yourself get down. And we were writing it, and for Three Dog Night, so it didn't have to be about, I sail the ocean. So we were in there for days, 3-4 days maybe, high as a kite, writing and sitting in this little room, and one thing led to another, and we wrote, and something happened, and I just said, "Well, I'm tired of this," and I got up and left. And about 3 years later, I guess, 4 years later, I was driving down the street, and I hear, "Sail on, sail on, sail." I went, "Man, that sounds familiar." And I pull over the side of the road, and I hear, "I sail the ocean, if I cast at Seaway or something, through tremor waters and deep commotions, often frightened and enlightened." See, I went, "Man, that's a nice song, but what are those lyrics?" So what happened was, is they had found a tape that Brian and I did, and Jack Riley or somebody added words to some of it. But if you listen to a Ray Kennedy album, when it was on, that's the original. That's what the song was about. The song was about a personal life, about a person. Don't fall down. Keep on going. Don't let your head get down. Sail on, sailor meant no matter how bad you feel, no matter how, whatever the world throws at you, keep your head up, keep on going, don't give up. That's what Sail on Sailor was about. So it was a surprise when I heard it, and it was about, I sail the oceans. It was not, I didn't sit down with Brian to write it about. We weren't writing I Sail the Ocean song.
So I got to ask you, though, did that piss you off any?
Did that piss me off?
Kind of, yeah, a little bit that they changed the lyrics. I mean, I don't know how that works.
I think the fact is that somehow, first thing I did is pull off the side of the road, because then we didn't have cell phones, and I called Capitol Records or something, and they said, "No, Warner Brothers or somebody has that out." And I said, "By who?" I said, "Who is that?" They said, "That's the Beach Boys." I said, "The Beach Boys?" And of course, it was Blondie Chappell sang it, so it wasn't the normal Brian or somebody singing it. Brian wasn't even there, really to do it. Somebody found a copy of a tape and added some lyrics, and they cut it. Nobody called me and asked me, but what they didn't do is they stupidly, I guess Brian or somebody made them put my name on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was essentially it was written by Brian and I, by Ray Kennedy and Brian Wilson. And when it came out by the Beach Boys, it was Van Dyke Parks, who we borrowed his tape recorder, and he was a buddy of Brian's or something, and they were good buddies. And I think Van Dyke's name got on there, and Dan and Almer, another guy. So I don't know who did what. And Jack Riley, the cousin of Mike Love, the singer. So a bunch of other names got it. So I had to sue, the normal thing. And of course, they didn't have a leg to stand on because I had the original tape. So we did a deal where, their version, I'd get this much. And when it was the original version, I just split 50-50 with Brian.
So Ray, what about when you're not performing? How do you wind down nowadays? Do you have any hobbies or TV shows that take you away from all the hassles, of everyday life?
How do I wind down? I don't know. I write, or I play the guitar, or I watch sports. I like sports, or I listen to music, or I have some really very sweet people in my life I talk to. I'm a pretty much of a people guy,
mm-hmm.
So I really like people. I mean, I can walk up to strangers and feel like I've known them my whole life.
You don't have any favorite TV shows? Are you a big TV fan?
I'm not a big TV fan, but I certainly do appreciate when there are good shows on TV or certain things of interest. To me, I think that there are certain channels you can go to. I didn't go to school for very long, leaving home so young. So educationally, I definitely have learned a lot from TV.
Mm-hmm. Stuff like Discovery, History Channel, stuff like that. That's
History
what I like.
Channel, I love History Channel. I love Discovery. I like to see things about whether it's snow skiing, skydiving, how doctors going to medical school, how they get there. I never really was very educated.
Well, how about social media, man, or anything like that? Do you have anything like that where people can go and get information about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, they can go to RaymondLewisKennedy.com, and that's just a bio on who I am, where I've been, where I came from. It's LOUIS, Lewis Kennedy, Raymond Lewis Kennedy.
Ray, you have a very interesting story, and we had a great time, chatting with you tonight. I want to thank you for coming on our show, and we wish you good luck in the future.
Yep, God bless. Thank you very much.
You too. Bye-bye.
And love to your audience. Bye-bye.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.